Well, the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry has urged government and President Cyril Ramaphosa to reopen the fast food outlets with strict regulations. SACCI CEO Alan Mukoki says the fast food sector can be handled in a way that is safe to the public by not allowing long queues, but rather limited drive-throughs and delivery operations. CEO Alan Mukoki now joins us on the line. A very good morning to you, Mr. Mukoki. You want government to reopen fast food outlets with strict regulations. What are these regulations that you're suggesting?
Well, good morning to you and good morning to listeners. First and foremost, thank you for the invite. I think that the argument that we're making is a very simple one. The issue of the pandemic is a very serious matter indeed. So we support wholeheartedly and totally President Ramaphosa's leadership in instituting this lockdown that we're fully behind it ourselves, because we want to make sure that the issue around the pandemic is actually being handled. However, having said that, we don't have one evil that is facing South Africa. We have two. The other evil is the economic collapse that we have to make sure that we're trying to prevent. So to that extent, wherever it is possible to see those sectors that can go back to work, such as the fast food outlets, we will insist that, number one, they should go back by ensuring that they do not aggravate the situation of the pandemic. In other words, mitigation factors that should be built around people who go back to work, such as, to answer your question finally, all the staff members who go back to work should be tested before they go back to work, to ensure that they are not infected, to ensure that they are not infectious. Number two, as they are at work, they should be provided with all the necessary and relevant personal protective equipment, masks, gloves, whatever it is that they need. Number three, the issue of the transportation of those people who go back to work to and from home should be handled with the highest level of hygiene that is necessary, okay? So that when they go home, the social distancing is protected, the mode of transportation that they're using is going to be like that. Number four, the customers who come to collect their food, drive-through, must be done in a way that is safe. Number one, social distancing again. Number two, deliveries that are going to be made to your house. If you've ordered a Nando's chicken with chips and Coca-Cola, whatever the case might be, the delivery person should be someone who has also been tested and found to be negative of the COVID-19 virus. And their equipment, their bicycle, whatever they're handling, must also be disinfected. And then number four, when we get to the stage of doing the click to call, the call and collect, we need to make sure that when you don't just show up at the KFC to come grab and wait in the queue. You would have called first, you would have ordered whatever you're ordering, and then you show up because they've told you your food will be ready in 20-30 minutes, to make sure that we avoid any queues that may well arise outside. So no walk-ins, call, collect. And that's what we're actually saying. And we believe that if you do that, you can then create a template for which of the sectors, as the President himself has said, we need to start working over the coming days on sectors that can recover very quickly and get back to work, because we cannot sustain a lockdown over months, because as the American Dr. Fauci says, you cannot set a time on the virus. The virus itself will set the timeline. So our fear is that we may come to June, July, we would not have the level of sufficient data when that high season of infections comes up to understand what we're doing. So we need to find a way and means of living with the virus, making sure that we don't aggravate the situation when we say this sector must go. So the fast food sector offers us the low-hanging fruit in terms of the test case. Let's see how we can do with them, because we know we can put those measures in nice and quick. And then after that, we can start investigating scientifically, not just theoretically, with practical steps of how do you want to go back to work and protect the public from this pandemic. That is what our position is.
So, Mr. Mukoki, here's the spanner in the works. All the processes that you are suggesting be undertaken to ensure that the people who provide the food provision services undergo are already held up elsewhere. The President and the Minister of Health, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, are already concentrating all of these efforts and into the fight against COVID-19. it'll require skills to come in, then extend this process to come and test people in the food services. How do you suggest we go about this?
We have said very clearly, we're doing controlled and measured. In the final analysis, the government itself is going out to do mass testing in any event. Where you want to go to people's homes, you want to go and check them for any signs of infection, and those who actually show symptoms of infection, then you're going to go and get them tested. We don't have a choice. It's not like we can sit in a lockdown for 3 months or 4 months. This economy will actually collapse. So we have to do whatever it is necessary. Testing people who are going to go back to work when we work together with government, the private sector and government together, is not something that is so insurmountable. It can actually be done. As you say yourself, the government is already doing it. So we then say, let's focus on the people that we need to get back to work as well to ensure that that actually can be done. If it needs resources, let's throw money at the problem. Because in any event, we're going to lose a lot of money, lose a lot of jobs. This particular sector in particular employs 150,000 people. They are going to be in the UIF also waiting for that 40 billion that will run out very, very, very quickly. If there's a way in which we can avoid them, whatever sector it is, from being in that UIF queue to finish the money. If there's a way, the majority of the businesses in the fast food sector are all SMEs. If there's a way in which we can avoid those businesses queuing for government assistance and the measures that the government has put in, which is not going to be enough anyway, let's try and do all of that, because it's the ecosystem that we must protect in the final analysis. And when we've learned enough lessons to the fast food outlet people, we can figure a way of who else can go. We cannot control the timeline of the virus. The virus will set its own timeline. We could be here for the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and then what? So we now have to start preparing. How are we going to live with the virus in a way in which we don't aggravate the situation, but we mitigate the situation? That's what the message is. We don't have a choice.
Is SACCI preempting that the lockdown might continue beyond the end of April?
Sorry, I missed the question.
Is SACCI preempting that the lockdown could go on beyond the end of April?
SACCI is not preempting anything. SACCI is quoting scientists who are saying that you cannot time the virus. The virus will set its own time. So it's not about the president, what the president wants to do or does not want to do. The president cannot know what's going to happen at the end of April. Our peak period is going to be June, July, okay? So no one knows what the timeline of the virus is. What we know, we're relying on a possibility of getting a vaccine, which is going to be best case 6 months, worst case 18 months. So while we're planning for that world that we don't actually know, there are so many unknowns. And that's why we went into a lockdown. We went into a lockdown to try and figure the known. We have a lot of unknowns. Science is telling us nobody can predict the timeline of the virus. The virus will set that own timeline. And if we then accept that as a reality of our time, we then need to figure a way, how do we do that in a way in which you don't collapse the economy? Because there will be thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs that are going to be lost. There will be hundreds of thousands of businesses that are actually going to go down. The government of South Africa will struggle to repay its own loans, and we may well default. Because we come through a process where we're facing three other evils. We went into a technical recession. Whilst we were trying to figure and work our heads around the technical recession, where growth was negative and unemployment was actually getting worse, we were then hit by the virus, the pandemic. We then had to put the country into a lockdown, which will be devastating for the economy anyway. Whilst we're busy trying to deal with that, and then we got a rating downgrade to junk. So three evils happening all at the same time basically means doomsday for South Africa. We then need to be able to say lockdown alone is not a sustainable strategy over a long-term period, because the government will run out of money to support those SMEs, because there isn't enough money running around anyway. Everyone is looking for money. The money is not there. The government does not have money to sustain SMEs over a period longer than 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, given the fact that we don't know what the timeline of the virus is going to be. So we have to do what we can do. The non-negotiable is to ensure we do not aggravate the issue of the pandemic, the infections, and the curve. That is non-negotiable. So any sector that wishes to go back needs to give this assurance, not just by words, but by action. What are the things that you're going to put on the table to ensure that we're going to mitigate and put in the mitigation factors around the virus? No one is started doing what the FFO people are going to do, by the way. Right now, you can walk into a Pick n Pay. You don't have to be tested yourself. You don't have to be wearing a mask to walk into a Pick n Pay. The people who work there don't have to be tested either. And we're saying that for the fast food outlet people, when they go back to work, each and every one of those people should not be allowed back in work unless they are tested and found to be negative of the virus. Then they can re-engage. And while they're at work, they all need to wear protective equipment so that they are protected themselves from infection and they themselves are not infecting any other person. And thirdly, the customers who come in are going to be coming in that way, where you are just going through a drive-through. You're in your car, pick up your food and leave. All right? You are not going to infect the person giving you the food because that person is wearing a mask. And the people who are coming to bring the food to your house, they themselves have been tested and their equipment has been disinfected. So we are making sure that all those things are actually going to be happening at the same time, whilst we are trying to make sure that we can put this relief on the economy so that we don't finish the money, which is very limited. And when you do that, you get a better chance of them saying, I've got a test case, I've got a template. The FFO people have actually, fast food outlet people have now showed us this thing has begun. Who else is next in the line? Because we need to gradually, measured, controlled way, get the economy to move. We need to live with the virus. We need to figure out how do we live with this virus that we got the economy moving again. At the same time, we don't cause aggravation.
Is government responding to your call? How are you conducting these interactions?
We are going to be setting up a meeting with the government next week. We've already sent them a document for them to respond. So we are going to be engaging the government with this. Okay. So we're hoping that they will. But remember that in the president's statement, which quoted ourselves, the president himself said the same thing. That we need to start looking at which of the sectors, right, can re-engage the economy in a way that is measured and controlled. It's in his own statement if you read it. So we're not saying anything that the government itself is not saying. We're actually supporting the call that the president made by pointing out here is one sector that we can start with so that we can learn without pressing on us.
On Thursday,
we're not preaching to the people who are not converted.
On Thursday, when the president was announcing the extension of the lockdown, he also made a plea to citizens to follow the example of providing or giving a portion of their salaries to this process. How is SACCI, have you, your members given up to the Solidarity Fund or a portion of their income?
Of course, members are giving what they can to the Solidarity Fund, but the South African Chamber of Commerce as an entity is a non-profit organization, so we don't have money to give to anyone except that our members are encouraged continuously to contribute to the Solidarity Fund so that we can all work together to stem the tide of the pandemic.
All right, we seem to have lost Mr. Mukoki there. Are you still with us, Mr. Mukoki?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, continue.
No, I'm saying that to the extent that we encourage our members to contribute to the Solidarity Fund, not just our members, any other member of the society who has the means to be able to do that. We encourage people to drive into that Solidarity Fund. We work ourselves within Business South Africa's structures and the work streams that are necessary as businesses' overall general response to how we can all work together to fight the pandemic. But remember, we're not just fighting the pandemic. We're fighting the pandemic on one side, we're fighting the other evil on the other side of avoiding an economic collapse. It's two things. Sometimes when we talk about the pandemic, people get lost in the translation. They think that we're doing one thing. We're not doing one thing. We're doing two things which are both serious and very critical, as I have said. There is no way South Africa can afford a default. There is no way South Africa can afford a sustained lockdown that is going to destroy jobs and businesses. So we have to manage both things without sacrificing the one. We can't say let's work while you're going to cause an aggravated situation of the pandemic and cause this infection to go high. That's not acceptable. So it's a non-negotiable for us. Maintain, flatten the curve, reduce the level of infection. So your engagement back into the economy must be in a way where it's safe. Like getting into an ocean with sharks and all sorts of dangerous things in there, but you are inside a cage. Go there, use a cage.
Just as a matter of interest, I don't know if this information has been collected already since we're talking about the fast food industry. Do we have any indication in terms of the stock that farmers have had to let go of because it's perishable in this process of lockdown, as the demand for food, for vegetables, we imagine has gone down?
It has, absolutely. We don't have the figures exactly, but we know that the farmers themselves are really straining at this point in time. Because, if you look at the fast food industry in respect of its contribution to the agri-economy, they contribute between 20 and 25% to that economy. So that's massive. That's almost a quarter of the agri-value chain that has to be down. So that goes to the product itself, whether it's tomatoes, whether it's the chicken, whether it's the onion, or whatever it is, whether it's the pepper. So those things are not being bought by anyone right now because they are not being sold in those fast food outlets. So you've got all those farmer jobs as well that are part of that value chain who are obviously suffering because sooner or later people are not going to be able to sustain this. And what's the easiest thing for any business person? If you can't pay for your own expenses, what are you going to do? Fixed expenses, you get rid of people. So we're going to full unemployment because this thing was forced on us. But we support the lockdown. Remember, don't get me wrong. We commend the president's leadership in this particular era. Has been absolutely exemplary. Now we need to help the president, right, as business, to say this is the way in which president we believe this thing can be done. Let's go back to work, but let's make sure that we don't cause this aggravation of the pandemic curve getting worse on us. That's all that there is to it. So we mitigate both sides of the equation, not the one side of the equation. Mitigate against the virus, the pandemic, but also mitigate against the economic collapse. Right now, the lockdown on its own is mitigating the pandemic, but it's aggravating the economic collapse. So now we say, let's think about it more clearly. Let's figure a way where we mitigate the pandemic and at the same time mitigate the economic collapse. Because those are two evils you can't avoid to deal with both of them.
Let's thank you for talking to us, but just to close off the conversation, what do you think are the chances of your call being successful?
The chances of our call being successful would be very surprised that it is not, because we are promising to do everything necessary to do so. But at the same time, don't forget what I said to you earlier on. It is in the president's statement himself who said we must now start over the coming days looking at sectors that can go back into the economy. So we're not saying something that's new. We're actually responding to a statement coming from the president. We're not initiating a statement. We are not initiating the idea. The president has put it in his own statement to say we need to start looking at sectors that can go back. But we need to be ready as business to give the president ideas. Which sectors? We don't want him to come to us, guys, have you thought about the sectors that I was referring to? Here is the sector, president, fast food outlet. Let's look here. We think we can do this and do this very well.
I know we're only talking about one sector here, but do you have an indication as to how your members have been affected by this lockdown?
Significantly, because we see the queues, we see the pain, jobs are already being lost. Many of our members are no longer even paying their staff full salaries, as you know. Some are trying, but remember the expenses are there. Your fixed costs when you're running a business are going to be there. Whether you're making money or not, but the fixed costs are there. The salaries must be paid. The rents must be paid. Your debt obligations must be paid. Even if the bank says, okay, I'm prepared to give you a debt repayment holiday, it doesn't mean they're writing it off. So if you're paying someone $500,000 every month and you didn't pay them this month, by month 3, when you go back to work, you've got a 1.5 million problem. You don't have a $500,000 problem. So that is going to be devastating for many of these businesses because they cannot afford it over a longer period of time. Okay? Because the 14 days plus the 21 days is just an indication. It's a test for now. Right? But we don't know. As the American Dr. Fauci has been saying, you cannot set the timeline to this virus. It is this virus that will set the timeline. So we can't blame the president after another 2 weeks if he says, guys, nothing has happened. The infection rate is going up. People are dying. People are getting hospitalized. Remember, in South Africa, we still have not reached that June, July, deep winter period when general flu infections tend to go up. We haven't seen that. So we have not seen the ghost yet. And when we come to June, July, what happens if the infection rate really, really triples or quadruples or quintuples? We don't know that. So that's why the science says you can't set a timeline. We try this, we try that. But whilst we're trying this and trying that, can we plan for a worst-case scenario? Can we plan for a scenario where we're going to be in this thing for 6 months? What does it look like? We can't keep waiting. We're going to do 3 weeks and wait. We're going to do another 2 weeks and wait. In the meantime, whilst you're busy waiting, your patient is lying on the deathbed and that the patient may die. Whilst what are you trying to fumigate and disinfect the ward so that the patient does not get secondary infections. But the patient right now needs surgery to save them from death, from an illness that they had long before the COVID-19 came in. That's what the theory is.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
Yes.
We will try to follow up as to whether your plight is successful or not.